All right.
All right, so they had their discussions last year, they moved forward to progress, so what did we actually accomplish in current fiscal year? These are kind of hard to read, so I'm gonna read about this part. The Allen Street slope failure, that's pretty much done, that's been accomplished. The bids have been awarded. Construction is just getting ready to get started on the depot bathrooms. That project's moving forward. The bids are awarded. Construction has started on the bridge part marine infrastructure project. So that project's moving forward. A contract was awarded for the Pinnacle Park Master Plan. That's under, basically you'll be seeing something on that before.
That actually should be completed before long. We got a wrap up meeting about that in a couple of weeks.
The skate park was built and is being used. And employee wellness fair was held. That was one of the deals when you changed insurance companies, you had to start focusing on employee wellness as well. Hopefully in the future, reducing your insurance cost. A funding source was found for the chief's community care project that you heard your presentation on today. You've had a successful transition to a paid fire department. This is it's something that was accomplished. Your 22-23 year audit that you just presented had no findings. You're in good financial shape and you had a good audit. The town website was updated and it's been activated. The exterior of the town hall here was painted, dressed up a little bit, and your Skyline Drive sidewalk project is just about the same. So I think you had a pretty successful year last year. As we go into the 24-25 budget, what are the issues you're going to be facing? One I mentioned a while ago, you can anticipate your health insurance costs are going to be high. That's just about a given. Personnel cost, being able to compete in salaries, that's something you got to look at every year. But you try to hire people, it's harder and harder to find qualified people, and your competitors are paying more. The town participates in the state and local government retirement system. Our share of those costs have gone up every year. Some years much more than others. I haven't seen what the actual increase is for next year, but I'd be willing, and you will see an increase in those costs. Again, it's very difficult finding good qualified applicants, especially law enforcement officers right now. When I was in Elizabeth City for a short period of time, they were down 70 some officers and could not be played. It's terrible there, and you're starting to see that statewide. The cost of goods and services, everything's going up. You've been to the grocery store lately, you know what that is. Everything we buy, the cost for every piece of equipment, it supplies materials we buy has gone up significantly. Your Highway 107 project, you know, buildings are being torn down. Those buildings are going off the tax books. I'm not sure we have a finite number, but I think everybody's sort of focusing on that $300,000 estimate is about what we think our property tax values go down. Reduced federal funds. Now, ARPA was one of the best things Congress ever did for local governments, towns and cities and counties have been able to do a lot of projects and to do a lot of good with those funds. Those funds aren't gonna be there next year. Your citizens continually want more. They want more services, they want better parks, they want better streets, sidewalks. That's always additional cost to the town. As I mentioned, future capital projects, you're gonna have less money back. So you're gonna have to get, creative on how you pay for these projects and where that money comes from. Sales tax, and I'll get to that in a minute, has significant increases every year. I think we're at a point that growth has stopped, and you'll probably actually see a reduction because those businesses that were torn down for the highway project aren't paying sales tax. I'll show you some of those numbers. Again, we mentioned, I mentioned the rock wall out here. It may last another 50 years. It may not last 50 months, but that's something you're gonna have to deal with it. Futures of the economy. So those are some of the issues you're gonna be facing when you get into the budget discussions this year. Sales tax, I think she mentioned, is about 40-some% of the budget. Now, if you look at the fourth or fifth line down, the fiscal year 18-19 budget, you budgeted $558,000. You actually collected $641,000. The following year, you budgeted $617,000 and collected $664,000. The 2021 budget, you budgeted $511,000. You brought in $818,000. 21-22, you budgeted $717,000 and you brought in $921,000. The 22-23 budget, you budgeted $873,000 and you took in $1 million. So you've been taking in significantly more than you budgeted. I think that's like Lynn touched on. You have been very conservative budgeting your sales tax revenues. What that has allowed you to do is you spend less money than you take in, and that has allowed your fund balance to grow over years, where it's now a very healthy fund balance, and you should, that is a very positive. Now, what's happening this year? You budgeted $865,000. Even though you took in 1.017 last year, but when you look at sales tax in this current year, you've been paid 4 months worth so far. And if you look at that second line at the top, you could, from July of this year to November of this year, you've collected $438,000 worth. The same 4 months last year, you collected $462,000. So for this first 4 months of the year, you're down about 5%. If you take what you actually collected last year, which is 1.017 million, and you reduce that by 5%, you still should collect about $964,000 this year. That's still just over $100,000 more than what you budgeted. But you're still, you're still going to take in less money this year than you did last year, but because of your concern budgeting, you are still in good shape. My question is, this is July through just the first 4 months of this fiscal year, most of your buildings are just getting torn down now. So that 5% drop, I'm not sure is a result of the demolition of these buildings. I think sales taxes statewide are probably gonna level off. So you may see as these buildings close and they get torn down, you may see that number go down some more. So I just caution you.
I was wondering if that reflected anything to do with the
I don't think it
demolition of
does yet.
107 problem.
I think really that's just a statewide trend. I mean, sales tax just went crazy for about 4 years. And I think now we're kind of seeing that level off. I don't think sales tax moving forward, until you do start adding businesses back and people start spending money in those new businesses. Hold harmless, it's about the same thing. It's about 5% less than what it was last year during the same time frame, but that's only about $5,200. But as you move forward in this fiscal year and in the next year, that's something you need to watch to see how much that is varies from year to year. And I think you get a good comparison comparing, the 4 months of this year compared to 4 months of last year. As you move forward, look at, 5 months compared to 5 months, but that's just something to keep your eye on.
And so, do you mind if okay, so when I was looking at this, I intentionally was keeping what we budgeted low. This time last year, we were talking about a possible recession. And so we had to take that into consideration, but I was also looking at the fact that 107 was coming, and we have no way to predict what those businesses, how much sales tax they pay. That's not public information, so it's just a guess. So we held that lower with the anticipation that 107's coming, and if we added it like the 1 million in there, that would not, I don't think that would have been good, because then we would have had to start dropping and our budget would have been based on the higher amount. So we looked at this 107 stuff for quite a few years and tried to plan accordingly. So that's why those, that's why it was not, and each year they talk about, they don't really know why there's such a huge increase after the COVID. That's when it started going up, and they can't really put their finger on why it's gone up this high. So if they can't really, if there's not a lot of justification why it has increased that much, you don't want to really base your numbers, your budget on those inflated numbers. And then each year they're like, well, it's probably going to go down, but it's continued to be up there. So, we put this additional funds to good use. It needed to build up our capital reserve fund and such. But it's just
Being conservative in your budgeting is good.
yeah, and especially this source of revenue. They highly recommend you do that. But 107 was definitely taken into consideration. That would be decreasing. We didn't know how much, but we didn't want to inflate the revenue source and then have to decrease it by a significant amount in addition to losing it for 107 businesses.
So is it, when Paige gave me the number a long time ago that for property tax purposes, most likely looking at a $300,000 loss in revenue from 42 buildings being torn down. We had not discussed at all the sales tax revenue or what that might possibly be. So, I mean, is that a number that's $500,000 or is it another $300,000? I have no idea.
Well, we don't either. You can't,
I would just guess you're in the,
yeah,
$50,000 range.
Okay,
Maybe, I don't think you would be over that. You still got a lot of retail business. And you got a lot of people.
that increases
Sell
our
the
loss
shop.
revenue to 350,000 instead of 300.
It very easily could be that.
So let me back up on the property tax just a minute. There is nothing, we don't have numbers right now to back a $300,000 loss or to back that number. That's an estimate that I assume has been given out, but we don't have the data from anywhere to say that we are going to lose this amount of money on property taxes. Okay, we are still waiting, and it's a rolling number until we get right-of-way acquisition complete and the county does their reassessments of what's left. At that point, we'll have a number, but there's really not even a way to firmly estimate what we're losing, because from the original plans, the permanent construction and easements, the temporary construction easements, utilities and all that have shifted so much, and properties that were not included have been added, those that were included have been taken out, as in any project when plans change. So we don't even really know what's gonna happen to property taxes at this point. Which is all the more reason to be cognizant.
It'd be $200,000.
Right.
I really don't.
Well, the more evasive they get with it and add things like bulb out and take out speedies, for example. That's an addition to the project, and they've not done any reductions that I've heard tell. It's only, let's do more, bigger and bigger. So,
But we're not, so in the 2023 tax year, it's property taxes are billed as of the owner of January 1st. Okay, so then those are billed the following fall. So we're realizing in this right now what happened in calendar year 22. Okay, so we're gonna realize what happened in calendar year 23 in our upcoming, this 24-25 budget. We don't have those numbers yet from the county. And so not all right-of-way acquisition is complete yet. So there'll be another amount that we will realize. Now, it's offset a little bit because we have had new construction in certain places in town. And thankfully that offsets that. So we've had some housing built in different areas. We've had commercial renovations and stuff that have added property value to the buildings. So that offsets some, but we don't know as to what amount that's gonna offset or what degree, we're looking at.
About March or April, you'll know what your actual
Correct.
tax numbers. are.
Yeah,
So-
for this upcoming bill.
and just so you know, 6-8 months ago, I sat down with Paige and we talked about it, and she had run some rough numbers for me based on, the value of the buildings and the amount of property, the tax that they paid each and every year, and which one were charted to be took down. Had nothing to do with any expansions or nothing to do with any sales tax, just property tax on those buildings. And the rough number she gave me was $290-ish. And it was basically right at $300,000. And now we're hearing that any scenario at all is gonna be probably worse than that, right?
It's hard to say. I
It's
mean,
hard
it
to
could be
say.
better, it
Yeah.
could be worse. I think you'll know more.
Yeah.
March or April in the county. It gives you your tax numbers.
Yeah.
And see, one thing in this equation is a portion of your property taxes are vehicle taxes. You got people buying $60,000 and $70,000 automobiles when they go trade. I mean, those numbers are going up. So you're gonna get more taxes off of those too, so. But you'll know more March or April when you get into the actual budget numbers. Hopefully to be less, but I wouldn't think it would be much higher than that. I think you're gonna pick up other revenues because of new construction and automobiles. I think it's kind of offset that. If you look at the $865,000, you're gonna take, on sales tax, if it stays the same and you are down 5%, you're still picking up about $100,000 more than budget.
Yeah.
Interest on investments, you're picking up probably $200,000, Lynn, on what you budgeted versus what you already collected in your savings account. So there are some positives. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yes.
Positives there also.
A lot of that's come from conservative management in past years.
Yes. Okay, property tax reevaluation, you're not due until next fiscal year. We normally do that every 8 years. When that happens, you are required by state statute to publish a revenue neutral tax rate, which basically says our tax rate at all amount would generate the same amount of income based on the higher values of property. You don't have to adopt a revenue neutral tax rate, you just have to publish it. So that your citizens know that if you keep the same tax rate, or if you raise that tax rate, you're bringing in more money than you did last year. It's just letting them know what's going on. But you won't face that until the 26 budget. I think we kind of been over this, the state and local revenues is 23% of the budget. Your property taxes are 52% of the budget. Most people think taxes pay all of the costs, but it only pays half, but a lot of other different revenue sources. Currently you pay for medical insurance on your retirees. And that's based on their number of years of service. They have to meet certain qualifications. They have to work here plus a certain number of years to be eligible for that. And from the time they retire until they become Medicare eligible, which is age 65, you pay those costs. You're currently putting about $125,000 a year back into a savings account to cover that cost. You started that, probably 5 or 6 years ago, Lynn, or longer?
Longer.
Yeah. So,
Long time ago.
it is a recognized expense in your budget. You're making attempts to cover those costs for the future. Let's see, separation allowance. If a law enforcement officer retires, the state requires you to pay a separate retirement check each month to that officer. The officer has to be of certain age. He has to have certain years of service. But if he retires at age 50 and he meets all those qualifications, you got to pay that until he reaches age 62. On average, chief, that might be $1,200 a month. $1,500 a month, somewhere in that range. It varies depending on years of service. And again, these are future costs. If an officer stays with you when he meets his years of service and retires early, you got to pay that cost, and that's required by the state. You have no option there. So once again, you're putting money back to try and cover all those costs. You probably don't have it covered 100% in the future, but you're making that effort. With some of the things I just covered, you got to pay that cost. You're financially obligated. You get a report each year showing you what the projected future costs are and what your future obligations are versus what you have as bank. That's what it's cost. Again, retiree medical insurance, you have to pay that cost. Again, as you move forward this year, you're currently with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I suspect sometime about March or April, they'll tell us what our actual cost will be for next year. But I can assure you, like the current budget year end, we were facing $80,000 worth of increase They switched to Blue Cross, they basically came out even. I would suspect you're not gonna have that option this year, which is, there's just not that many opportunities. We've covered most of this. I mean, the medical insurance, they're saying your future liability is $1.2 million. You've been putting back, I think $125,000 per year. Your annual payments are probably running about 119, but all the funds that you have set aside, what they say your future obligations are, you're about $265,000 short, but that's, you pay these costs every year, but you hire new people, you get different numbers every year. I mean, to be only $265,000 short, you're in good shape. A lot of towns fund it from the budget each year. They, once they know what the cost is, they put that in the budget. Have been smart enough over the years. You started putting money back. So your annual budget contribution is significantly less because of those savings you put back. So again, you got an aging workforce. Now, under retiree medical insurance, you are currently paying 4 people for the current budget year, and your current staff, you have 2 people that are eligible to retire. They're still working, but they could retire if they wanted to. Fiscal year 24-25, you got 1 employee that could retire again. That's how it costs you'd have to pay for their health insurance until they reach age 65. Let's say separation allowance, you're currently paying 2, and in the budget year 27-28, you'll have 1 more. If that officer retires, you'll have to pay now. But normally what happens there, you drop 1 off, then you add 1. So it stays fairly constant over time. So it's manageable. And again, your future liability is $623,000 for the future, and you're only running about $70,000 short on this based on the reserves you have. So again, you've done very well in this. I think this question was asked at your last board meeting. The town does have to pay a portion of the sidewalks for the Highway 107 project. Our estimated cost is about $200,000. You budgeted $100,000 in the 2018-19 budget, $50,000 in the following budget, $20,000 in the next budget, and $30,000 in last year's budget. So you have $200,000 set aside for that project right now. The Skiles Drive sidewalk project, the town's portion of that project was $384,000. I think that's currently all funded, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, we've paid out the $114,974. We still need to pay the $269,432. So that's the balance on that.
Or is that funds budgeted or is that?
Yeah. No, they're budgeted. We've had that budgeted for a number of years.
How much is that for grant money? You have any idea?
That we,
The sidewalk, yeah.
our portion,
Yeah.
What the state pay?
none of it.
The founders paid for the whole thing.
Of our portion, the 384,406.
The entire project was what, $2 or $3 million?
Yeah, it's 20% is the town's stake in a sidewalk project.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. So the
That's
other,
fun.
that DOT funding,
With the sidewalk.
80% of
Yeah.
the job.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, it's federal
Yeah, and it,
funding from DOT, I think.
yeah, and of course did increase over the time of the project, so we adjusted and amended for that.
But again, you knew it was coming up. You started setting money aside each year to cover those costs when you got there.
Yeah.
So when it comes time to do construction, you're not pulling money from somewhere else. Money that you've already handled and stuff.
Question. What, can you go back to a
Yeah.
second? The 200,000 we committed to the 107 sidewalks. Well, I don't understand where are those sidewalks gonna be if they're in the construction project? Wasn't they in the budget for the?
I think what it is there are certain sections where it won't, where that is not sidewalk in the project. This kind of bridges the gap between those sections. DOT's not gonna fund a piece of sidewalk starting project. Is that right, Jake, or is that?
I actually couldn't speak to that. I've always, since I've been here, the town's paid 20% for sidewalks, an 80-20 split with the DOT on a sidewalk project or a road project. And I was under the assumption that's the way it's been for some time. That's the way it's always been since I've been in my role.
I suspect this sidewalk project's gonna be way higher than Skyline Drive.
When have we gotten
Sidewalk
a
project.
projection on the 20% split on the 107 project yet?
No, Paige has always dealt with that. I don't
We
know.
find that answer out for.
I would suspect that DOT's figured on putting back the appropriate sidewalk in places where we have a sidewalk now, and they're expecting the places where we don't have a sidewalk now that money pays for that to continue it on.
That'd be my guess, but we'll find out for
Yeah.
sure.
And that money that we're paying to continue that on is probably just 20% of the cost of it too.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
The Allen Street slope repair, we've got all that, it's basically done. Bryson Park, that's underway. You'll start seeing those. I'll see in the next couple of meetings. The public restroom is under construction. The Bridge Park Stormwater project is under construction. And as she mentioned, ARPA, we put a portion of those funds, I think we received $872,000. And this is what it's been spent on the public restroom project, $215,000, Bridge Park Stormwater project, $516,000 were the two major projects that makes it. And then she mentioned the balance in that fund is $136,000, which would be available for any other future projects you pay for, like the petite or bathrooms, maybe. Some, you got options there. That money's available to be used. It has been pulled from ARPA. The town has, as I made all the requirements that was attached to those funds, and it's basically town money now. We don't have to worry about the timelines of ARPA and all that's already been taken care of. So $136,000 that can be spent now. Or it could sit in that fund for the next 5 years if you want to. There are no longer any restrictions on that money. And that concludes that part. I did ask each of you to prepare a list of 5 of your objectives. And we also look back at a couple of budgets. We also talked to staff, and we also started listing things that I heard, that some of you mentioned, and that you'd like to see accomplish everything. Let's put that on the screen. Well, actually, we have about 34 items on that list. You can't do them all, but there are items And I think the town should be focused on. Some are small budget items, some are large budget items, some may take several years to complete. If you keep your eye on the finished product, you keep pushing these and bring these things up, I think you can accomplish most of them all the time. But what we'd like to do this afternoon, for the next 15 minutes, is for each of you to take those 34 items and pick out your top 10. And she's gonna give you the list, separate piece of paper, so we'll take a few minutes and if you'll mark your top 10, then we'll compile those lists and we'll see, it's all where they all shake out. And, hopefully we can pick the top 5 or 6 that you want to see accomplished this year. And hopefully staff can move those forward for you. They'll look at it during the time and stuff. So that's sort of where we are.
That's front and back. To pick your top 10.
Take about 15 minutes if you would, just to read them. And you'll recognize most of them. Some are from last year, some are, the 5 items you sent me. So then to get to the point, if you mark your top 10. We need to stay live while they're doing this, or not.
If you want to recess, we can recess. Whatever you prefer. There.
Yeah, let's do that while they're looking at the list.
This is our last task for today. Is it possible? I'd like to kind of review this more than. Is it possible for us to fill this out and send it in or bring it back? I know Brad and Mary are, they're gonna complete this again, right?
They've already completed it, so
So they
they're
already did that. Okay.
We sent them down list earlier today and they were able to get it done. So that was,
no, this takes the place of how you used to have the
Yeah.
dots that you did on the same day. That's what this is.
And we can choose.
10.
So are we taking a recess?
Yeah, let's take a recess while